YouTube, Awesome Writer here. Welcome to my review for Mighty Morphin Power Rangers issues 112 and 113. I'm a little behind on the comics. 112 kind of just came out at this weirdly busy time, and then by the time I realized and had time to review it, 113 was almost out, so I decided, let's just bundle these reviews together. And it kind of worked out, because while 112 was a solid issue that I really liked a lot, because it was kind of more character-driven, a little bit exposition-driven, but it had meat to it. It wasn't like a traditional issue where you had a lot of action or pieces moving, so it wasn't necessarily a super meaty issue to talk about. I mean, it was because there was important stuff, but you know what I mean? Like, there wasn't necessarily tons of things to talk about. So that issue was more simple. We've primarily followed two things in the aftermath of the grid being infected, which is Billy talking to this Grace construct and the mmpr/Omega team just kind of regrouping and getting Matt back on board for Team Ranger, at least for now. So basically, Grace is dead, fully confirmed that she's dead. We still don't know if Matt did it. He's saying he did, but it seems like he's just doing that because people are assuming the worst of him, because he doesn't remember doing it. So we don't know for sure how that went down, but she is dead, and she survived by, she did like this weird, kind of convoluted explanation of putting a chip in her head that makes her that so she can't attack humans, but she can fight demons. Oh, that's Spike. No, but basically like it transferred a version of her consciousness into this construct that's in the grid. It's kind of like, if you're ever familiar with anything Superman, when he can talk to his parents or other Kryptonians via these like AI constructs. But basically she's explaining to Billy what's going on, that the grid's infected. They tie it back to the Morphonaut and what was originally tried to be done in the Power Rangers Universe comic. Again, I just want to reiterate, one of my favorite things about this overall run leading up to this and then this event now is how much they're taking advantage of so many things, almost everything in some way that's been built up in the comics, which is super cool. And I love that they're acknowledging Power Rangers Universe, because I have a soft spot for that story. Like, it was a mess in some ways, but it also had some really cool lore to it. But anyway, she explains to him what's going on there. There's some sort of nice scenes just about Billy's like unsure of himself because he's not like the Red Ranger or whatever. And she's like, no, Billy, you can do this. Blue Rangers are problem solvers. That's a trait they all have. And I think they kind of try to align that with this idea they're pushing for Power Rangers Academy, which is that like each person resonates with a certain color of the Ranger grid, kind of like lightsaber colors in a way, or lantern rings. I guess it's to a different degree, but I think that's kind of cool. And there's also a really nice line about her saying, like, Power Rangers aren't chosen for who they can be, but for who they are. They also do mention the shattering, and Billy doesn't remember it, and I forgot that most of the team doesn't remember that, but I thought they knew about it. Like, I knew that the Omega Rangers' initial call to action was about the Shattered Grid aftermath. Oh, that Shattered Grid meth, you know. We gotta cook, Tommy. I knew that like that's why they were called, but I assumed they told them once the mmpr team found out about the Omegas. It's just so much has happened I don't remember, but they do call that out, and Grace says, like, you're gonna have to research that on your own time, and it makes me curious whether that was just a throwaway line to highlight the similarities, or it's going to be important to this story, or maybe a future story. But anyway, the other stuff happening is just the mmpr team and the Omegas regrouping. I was surprised that most all of them are together. I think we're still missing the other two Omegas and stuff, but I thought there was going to be way more pocket groups. But like the lion's share of like the core characters are on the same planet. And they're basically talking to Matt about stuff, and it's some really interesting scenes where they're like, kind of clarify what happened to Matt is that they did break the spell, but there was some residual magic, but there's enough to, you know, have him break free, but it still makes him conflicted. As part of this was this nice scene with him and Tommy, where Tommy's like, I remember what it was like, and he's like, yeah, but you never killed anyone, but he says, yeah, Draken did though, and Draken is basically me. He's like a mirror of me and the worst that could happen. So I thought that was a great scene, and some of the best stuff Tommy's gotten to do in a while. I think Tommy's really gotten sidelined, prime Tommy, which makes sense. You don't want it to be Tommy all the time when you have Draken and stuff. But I thought it was a great scene that has Matt working with the Rangers again. I think that story ended up being unexpectedly great. So yeah, that was a solid issue. It was just kind of more like exposition driven and a little bit more character driven, and kind of setting the stage for some things. Whereas 113, a lot more stuff was happening. Billy makes it back to the Prime Earth. He's confused for a second though, not thinking he's there because you have the Draken Rangers there, and he's very upset and conflicted to see them working with Draken, and the thought that these, you know, mirror versions of themselves from Draken's world would work with them like Trini. Because there's some really nice scenes with Trini, which, you know, is highlighted because in their dimension, Billy's dead, but also is a nice highlight that for overall in most dimensions, Billy and Trini are close friends, which I was reminded of even more so after Once and Always this year. But it was interesting to see their dynamic of kind of a more naive Prime Universe Billy and this Trini that's been through a lot and is like defending them, working with these necessary evils. Also characters like, you know, Scorpina that Billy just views as straight up evil, but she knows has gone through much more of a journey on their Earth. So that was really interesting, and interesting for Trini to highlight. Like, you still see things as black and white, and it's not that simple. And there were some really interesting scenes there. You have Billy just outright attacking Draken, which is kind of crazy. And then I guess on the main Earth, like Finster's causing chaos by having a bunch of monsters just come out and attack. We also catch up with some other teams. I don't think we saw the core MMPR team in this issue, at least not much, because we do catch up with actually the Dino Charge team, just to kind of showcase what happens as they show, like, they kind of explain to you like why they have their powers and stuff, but they basically show that something's going on with the grid, and Kendall warned them not to morph, but then they end up morphing, and like basically when you access the grid, you open yourself up to the infection, and it infects them and makes them corrupt rangers. And that's was really cool to see that, to see them recreate some of the really felt like, you know, Dino Charge there, and to show how all that works. And then we check in with the villains too, and Rita. You see Rita kind of get all excited and ahead of herself, like our plan worked, and Dark Specter's like, oh no, you didn't have victory, I had victory, I'm the only one here. So it's clearly setting up Rita probably to feel like, not that she made the wrong choice, but that she, you know, was sort of, not, I don't know, lied to either, but you know what I mean, like she went in with Dark Specter thinking she was going to get more respect than she does with her father or Zed, and it's not really that, obviously. But there was an interesting dynamic of scenes there, just kind of setting the stage with the villains. And then we check in with the Hyperforce Rangers, which was great. I love that they're a part of this story. Again, just the dialogue and interactions of what they said felt so much like watching the Hyperforce stream. The Hyperstream, get it? Which was cool. And they kind of explain that they're not infected by morphing because of the way the Hyperstream works or some stuff. So that was kind of neat. And they also have Taylor with them from when they visited the Wild Force Earth, or I guess it was the Prime Earth, but in the future or whatever, in their comic. And then they also have Kendall, who managed to survive. And it very much feels like Shattered Grid, which I'll get to in a minute. But they make contact with the Draken Rangers in this. And we end off the issue with Trini and Billy trying to enact this plan with the Morphin Eggs, which I believe was from when the Morphin Masters were first introduced, because the Morphin Masters were created from effectively a throwaway line from MMPR, because if you ever rewatch MMPR, it's crazy how much just random, like, nonsense lore they throw out there just for the sake of having an explanation of why something's happening that clearly wasn't given too much thought other than we need a reason for why this thing is happening. And I love like how stuff like that has been expanded on, primarily in the comics, but over the years. But this was a really cool tie-in. They're effectively like, we can activate this egg with this morphin energy and it might be of help. And it blows up or whatever. Huge explosion goes off, and the cliffhanger is Billy coming face to face with the Phantom Ranger, which is obviously super cool because the Phantom Ranger was the Morphonaut that tried to stop this from back in the day during Power Rangers universe. But yeah, this was a great issue. I'm really enjoying this event so far. Like I said, it's been really interesting. Really good job of taking advantage of so much of the lore and stories that have built up, but also making some time for some good character stuff, like Billy's interactions with the Draken Rangers, the interactions with Billy and Trini, even the Billy and Grace stuff, the stuff with Matt. So I think it's been everything I love about the comic so far. My only note is, this isn't necessarily a criticism in the sense that it's something that's negatively impacting my review of it or my opinion of it is kind of remarkably similar to Shattered Grid in the sense that both events are something happening to the grid causing instability, and they're kind of traveling through time and space, recruiting other Rangers. I specifically thought about that when they mentioned the shattering and like how it's similar in a way, and also when they showed the Hyperforce team with Wild Force Yellow and Kendall from Dino Charge there, reminded me very much of like Team Shattered Grid, which was the MMPR Rangers, and then Time Force Pink and Red Samurai, and they're going to recruit more Rangers to save them from this. And that's kind of what they did in Shattered Grid, whereas in Shattered Grid, you had Draken recruiting Ranger Sentries, or like making Ranger Sentries and building up forces, and then you had the Rangers traveling throughout time and space building up forces. And that's kind of what's happening here, where you have Dark Specter's infected forces and the Rangers' forces. And there's a lot more details and other things that are different, so it doesn't feel like a carbon copy, but there's admittedly a similarity. But how are you guys enjoying this anniversary event so far? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps, ring that bell. See you notifications for my videos. Dawson Ryder, signing out.